Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me fine. Tonight, I seem to be without panel, so I'm going to go through the Court of Swords quickly in three specific decks that we have enjoyed looking at in the past. And I'll look forward to responding to your comments on YouTube. And so I'm going to, without further ado, begin with the Court of Swords in the She-Wolf deck. But before I, good evening, Justin. Nice to see you. That's was a little lonely out here tonight, so it's good. It's good to have somebody here to push me along. Good evening, Art. Nice to see you. Terrific. Okay. So tonight we're talking about the swords, which is the faculty of discernment in the psyche, and of being able to divide this from that and just decide which you want, whatever it is, or which is right, let's say. Thanks, Art. I'm doing pretty well tonight. I had one of my doctor's appointments postponed last night, so that was nice. And here I have a new panelist joining me, so that's nice. Karina, welcome. If you want to uncloak yourself, and you'll show on YouTube, of course, but we can also learn a little bit about you. And we have another new one, Lisa, coming. And again, Lisa, welcome. If you uncloak yourself and say hello, that will be great.
Hello.
Hi. Tell us something about what, if anything, you know about the tarot. It doesn't mean that you have to know anything to be on this panel. You can just talk with us.
Well, it's been a while. I have a couple decks, but I don't really remember anything. It was a few years ago, and I just learned about the different cards and some of the different spreads, and I have a few friends who use it, and I used to follow Hermeticism. And yeah, kind of gonna go back into that area.
Good.
I like to use tarot.
Okay, well, I think in this series, which you may have learned already, we're not really trying to do divination per se. We're trying to use the tarot as a way of understanding how all of our lives unfold, and the typical situations that unfold in a life. And so we're in the suits, which means we're in the typical situations that unfold in a life. And the best guidance we can give is that you probably will experience all 14 cards in all 4 suits, or 5 suits, depending on what deck you're using, in your lifetime. And so it's a good idea to know it and to recognize it. Good evening, Patricia. I don't have anyone sharing the spotlight with me tonight. We have 2 new ladies who are willing to be on the panel. So feel free, Karina and Lisa, to ask questions or comment as we go forward. I'm going to begin tonight with the She-Wolf deck, and I'm going to share my screen now so that you can see the Page of Swords here. So there she is, the Page of Swords, and I will read to you what Damani Wolf, who is the author of this deck, has said about her Page of Swords. And so here it is. Keys. Well, first of all, it's Venus in the air signs. And keys are impulsive, selfish, grave, challenging. The artwork illumination, to explain the artwork. A half-winged woman rests, protecting herself over the planet Venus. There is a dual nature to the message of this card. The one wing represents her ability to take flight for periods of time, whilst also being grounded by her seriousness. Venus is passionate, fiery, direct, lustful, and the element of air places us in the fleetingness of thought, passing emotion, reckless abandon. The combination of these two elements can create a vicious wind where passion is destructive. Her position, facing away from us, suggests she is also wishing to hide from her own intensity. And so, do we know any young women like that? Anyway, a light reading of this card is: the gravity of our emotions can be all-encompassing sometimes. Within the light meaning of this card, we can find the courage to delve into deeper passions and shadows that we incur and process them wonderfully. However, there's a risk of becoming too domineering and authoritative, thinking we've got more control over each process than perhaps we do. We should seek to remain humble and open to the notion that we are still nascent journeyers on our life adventure and not become know-it-alls. And the shadow side of this card: the sheer weight of our feelings may be weighing us down, confusing us, creating thick, impenetrable clouds through which we can only see our own perceptions of things, not the things themselves. We must be careful what we project outwards. Our feelings are strong, but they are not necessarily what the outer world is reflecting. We may be making dark assumptions of situations that simply need more time to be expressed and understood. Mantra: I take time to make sense of my feelings. That's the reading by Damani Wolf. Do we have any questions or comments on that card? And I'm just going to stop the share for a minute because I need to check, and I do have some other panelists coming in. Any comments on this card? I'll give it back to you now that I've checked. There it goes. All right, there she is again. Anybody have any comments on this card? I think it's a interesting card with the single wing and so on. Since we have a couple of young women with us, does this ring true in terms of the troubles of coming into adult womanhood, I guess, with it's sort of a stale chewing gum story that young teenage women often have fights with their mothers, and so they feel themselves coming through and wanting to challenge their mothers, but at the same time they're not sure of themselves, and so they've got one wing but not two. Any thoughts about that? Okay, no comments. All right. Okay, then I'm going to stop sharing that one. And oh, here's Gilda. That's good. Gilda often has good comments, so let me let her in. Gilda, welcome. I have some new folks joining us tonight, but everybody's shy. And so I need you for a counterpoint. And I've just read the description of the Page of Swords in the She-Wolf deck. I better share that again so that you can see what that card looks like and see if you have any comments on this card. Do you have any thoughts on this, Gilda? What I said is that this kind of represents young womanhood, just coming into puberty, perhaps the type of archetypal situation where the teenage girl starts to fight with her mother. And I can't hear you, Gilda.
You mean because of the fist in her hand? Is that why you say that?
Because she's only got one wing, and let's see.
But it's the Queen of Swords. That one is the Queen of. Oh, what does
This
it
is
say
the
below?
Page of Swords. This is the Page of Swords. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
if it's a page of Swords, I would say that the image displays a fanning of varieties of possibilities that eventually the young woman will come across or will need to embody in order to become whole and mature. And she can't yet she's not yet in touch into which one it is.
right.
So at least she's got all the possibilities around her, but she hasn't yet embodied them. She only has one side embodied at the moment, and so the other ones are still.
I'll just read the artwork illumination again, since you didn't hear it. It says, a half-winged woman rests, protecting herself over the planet Venus. There's a dual nature to the message of this card. The one wing represents her ability to take flight for periods of time, whilst also being grounded by her seriousness. Venus is passionate, fiery, direct, lustful, and the element of air places us in the fleetingness of thought, passing emotion, reckless abandon. The combination of these two elements can create a vicious wind where passion is destructive. Her position facing away from us suggests she is also wishing to hide from her own intensity.
Yes, in many ways, the experience is not yet embodied in order for the young woman to have good discernment. So she gets tossed in the zigzag of what's inside of her, which is not yet fully mature, and what's outside in the world. So with the many possibilities, this card shows that the guidance is not necessarily she's not looking at it. She only knows that this is the embodiment she has, but she doesn't have a mentor. She has to go exploring for her own all of those different facets in order to grow into that sun, which is in the back.
Right. And just in case comments here, it looks to me like the multiple overlapping woman of the card is a whirl. Reminds me of a weather system, like a metaphor of winds that throws us around in life. And
yeah, it's the wind, the ricochet that involves whenever she encounters something. There's this effect in the ricochet, which allows her eventually to learn her place. But at the moment, she cannot see it.
Yeah.
She's encased inside her body, and she's not quite able to discern
Yeah.
in or out. Both things are pulling at the same time, her wanting her attention, but she's not yet able to focus her attention on any one of
Right.
them in order to manifest them and embody them, to
Right.
move forward.
And just in case also says, she also looks like she's praying. Yeah, her one wing is a bit small, still not capable of handling a tempest. And Mistel says, at first glance, I saw Venus emerging. So yeah,
She has
Venus
no
is
counterpart at that, and she has no backing. She has no counterpart. It's
Yeah.
only her own being that is in the void of all these colorful expectations, and she's not yet paired or tantric or seen a complement.
Yeah. So like what I think of is a teenage girl who has a tremendous fight with her mother because she's coming into her own, and then she goes up to her room and starts pounding her fists into her bed. And then she stops and she's sort of wounded and
Well,
so
because
on.
she has no mentor.
Yeah.
She has no connection to a good reflection, or she's thrown into the park of,
Right. Of life.
exactly.
Right. The park of
So,
life.
mhm.
Such as it is, we're problem solving creatures, and
With
that's
all
what,
its facets, because of all these colors, it
yeah.
shows that everything is, all the possibilities are somehow on her left side, because notice, I guess she's on what we see as her right wing and
Yeah.
her right arm. We don't see the
Right.
left side, what's hidden.
Mhm.
So that's also a rather mystical one, because the left side is the feminine, or the one that is hidden,
Mhm.
and we can, and that's where all the possibilities are shown there
Right.
for an embodied full integral, that when she can come into being that a queen.
Right. And
So it's,
Estelle says very fragmented as well. She doesn't know where, what she's dealing with yet.
and she has a wing, but the possibilities are outside of her. She
Right.
cannot see them inside of her, and she does have no mentor outside, so they're just possibilities that are arising for her to handle, and she's uh, not yet come into her own to be able to make a discernment
Right.
in order to embody it and move
Yeah.
on to the next step.
Yeah. Everything is one-sided.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's
That's
the right side. It is the manifested side of objective reality.
yeah. Right.
Her
Okay.
body is one of them, for example.
Mhm.
The physical, tangible, visceral manifestation of her body, that she feels, it's there for grounded. So that also is also something that her youth and the height of her body is for grounded as being present,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
she's not able to include her
Right.
inner being.
Right. Right. Okay. So now this next card is the Princess of Swords in the Starman deck, and this is quite a different representation of the Princess of Swords. So, and his are always challenging, to say the least. You see her sort of hovering over a city, and she's got a sword, and so on. And the
Well,
subtype. Go ahead.
yeah, in this image, you can also experience the same, that outside of her, there's all of this going on, except here, her body's also all that's going on. She's not separate. And so, but she's holding something in her hand that may allow her to begin but she's at one with her environment, and her body and everything is out into the world
Right.
for manifestation.
Right. So the subtitle of this card is "I Call on You to Live Your Truth." And so here's what he says about, and this is the Starman Tarot that I'm reading from. The Princess of Swords brandishes her sword artfully and precisely. Daring, she scales the heights, a true spider woman. Her domain is high above the city's streets, running and leaping across rooftops, boasting both an agile young body and clear, penetrating mind. She is a fabulous fusion of superheroine and freedom fighter, a princess with an unquenchable thirst for truth. Her nimble mind grasps and connects stimuli at lightning speed, giving her an incredible outlook and ability a searing intelligence able to penetrate any circumstance, any drama. She can root out inconsistencies, delivering a powerful argument. Emotions don't get in her way, as she almost marvels at the quickness of her own mind to instantly read a given situation, assimilating many facets, contrasting, comparing, synthesizing, and evaluating possible solutions. It is almost a sport for her. Equally an avid raconteur with beautiful speaking voice and a wry wit, she draws out dilemmas, philosophies, and wisdom in her storytelling, appearing beyond her years. Her home is unashamedly in the sky, perched on the roofs of skyscrapers, like some exotic creature out of the scene from Blade Runner, Ridley Scott's great sci-fi epic, which visually inspired a generation, is married with the animation of Ghost in the Shell, a Japanese manga science fiction comic book. Her mind soars freely in the sky, rising and gliding like a bird on the warm vertical currents of air, giving her a unique and calm perspective. Up high, she can see there are many other vistas to explore. She won't hesitate to sharpen and test her sword on the most challenging of these. Inherently hardworking and principled and knowledgeable, she will pitch her wits in the fight for equality and justice for all. You could be mistaken for thinking this princess will indeed change something profound about the world. If only it were that simple. Those ideals, so beautifully articulated, could easily remain in the mental realm and not actually be grounded in reality. The Princess of Swords indicates the brilliance of the mind is at your side, an agile advocate for cutting away any obstacles as you scale the heights to success. You may be called to review the set of principles and assumptions you are living by. Those high ideals you are pursuing or once believed in. Life is a great journey filled with setbacks, wrong turns, and dead ends. You are being called to be an intrepid explorer, to question assumptions, values, and ideals. What is the purpose of your life? Why are you here? What do you want? How might you navigate the difficulties and inequalities and the dazzling array of opportunities to realize the best of your potential? What do you think is possible from the very best of human existence? The time is ripe for a philosophical re-examination of the meaning of life and a reacquaintance with some of the most remarkable thinkers and philosophers of our time. You are ready to begin walking your talk. And then reversed, this messenger has lost the exquisite balance between air and earth. Her sword is out of balance, the sword of the critic, which can so shred confidence. It's one's ability in one's abilities to wield not to solve problems, but now causes injury to those around her and herself. Disconnected from feelings and overwhelmed by thoughts and ideas, she's unable to focus and bring anything of real value to the table. A physical practice such as yoga, dance, weight training, or running would serve her to get her out of her head and into the body, while remembering the importance of breaking down any goal into manageable steps.
Well, so I will ask you, how would you compare the view of this princess to the one we just witnessed, who was hiding her head in her arm?
Well, this is a very active princess.
This one is completely the opposite.
Right.
She's out there thinking that she owns the world. So, and if they're both featuring the same kind of suit, then we need to ponder here where the balance is. I see that there's a ghost here to the left, that she is like a male figure, a partner that she cannot even see.
Yeah.
And she cannot distinguish. It's the reading says that she has this amazing clarity and distinction. I suppose that when one looks at the head on top with that light, it's almost like a skull or something.
Yeah, it is a skull, sure.
Right. You know, that might be something that's up, but it is above her. Above her is not. She's not embodied in that. So besides that, she blends into the milieu of this city.
Yes.
Objective reality. So I cannot quite get how she has this sharp intellect or sharp way of manifesting the logic or the logos when she's actually blended in with everything around her.
Well, that's part of it, to be able to come out of it, but also the sword allows her to slice up to the city into the parts that she can then understand. She may be too young to do that, and she hasn't yet faced death. You know, she hasn't yet understood that, you know, you have to grok what life is about, and then you can make decisions. But she still hasn't done that. She's got the power of a young person who, you know, knows everything. You know, especially teenage girls know everything, right?
We think, but also the interesting thing is that light that's above her and the ghost image next to her are both lights. So she hasn't quite embodied the tantric reference that would allow her to use that sword in ways in which is well applied.
Right, and of course that's the risk that's represented by the reversed reading of it, where she's just well, she's got all the energy and she has all the ideals and so on, but maybe she hasn't been beaten back enough times yet. And
she's completely objectified by whatever it is that she carries. She hasn't discerned or separated from it in order to be able to utilize and sort it into something of maturity.
Right. And interestingly, I have two girlfriends who have known me since I was 15, and they communicate with me every day, believe it or not. This started about 30 years ago when we had a reunion of my high school class on the 30th anniversary of our graduation. We graduated in 1964, and nobody saw anybody except I saw one woman once, at Harvard Library. In that whole 30 years, I only saw this one woman in Harvard Library who I knew and whose brother I had taken to the top of Mount Fuji. But besides that, I never saw anybody from high school. And then in the early 90s, people started to get electronic, right? And so one of my classmates did a search for our whole class through through a CD-ROM that was called the white pages at that time, right? And so he found most of my class and 4 other classes. He found as many people as he could out of 5 classes, 62 to 67. So they were perfectly around my class. And so we had a reunion in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and about 200 people showed up. It was terrific. We had a lot of fun together. And so I met one of these 2 girls at that 30th reunion. And we had known each other quite well because we were into horseback riding when we were in Japan. And I was paid to be a counselor on this bus where we had all these little Navy kids who were going out to the Army base where they had horses to ride once a week on Sundays. And so, and I thought she was a counselor too. I always thought she was a counselor. And meanwhile, I got paid for it. Minimum wage, but I got paid to basically babysit the kids. And only about 2 years ago, she said, "You were paid?" She didn't know that there was a job there that you could be paid for it. Meanwhile, I thought she was being paid all along. And so I never mentioned it to her. But okay, so I connected with that woman in 94. And then about 2004, so about 40 years later, there had been this incident where the first woman I described had come to me in high school when I was 15 and said, "Well, there's this girl really likes you. You're very interesting to her. And she really wants to sit down with you at the teen club and chat with you." And I said, "Well, okay, great. Let's set a date in the future and we'll do that." Well, then she says, "Well, no, it has to be today because she's leaving Japan tomorrow. And so you have to sit down and meet this girl at 4:00 this afternoon at the teen club." And it turned out that this girl had been on the bus all along, and I had never noticed her. but anyway, she had connected with this group of people that we had gotten together with. And so she started to exchange emails with me. And I don't know, something she said in 2004 reminded me of that incident, because I hadn't thought about that incident or that girl in 40 years, believe it or not. And with good reason, I think, because she was actually using me as a shill to make her actual boyfriend jealous.
Peak in place.
Yeah, at the time. And I didn't know that. Good evening, Idris. Nice to see you. And so.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm just doing something, but I'll also follow the conversation along. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. So
hello, everyone.
So anyway, so, she went off and lived her life for 40 years. And then in 2004, I said, "No, wait a minute. There was this crazy incident at the teen club where I had to meet this girl." And she said, "Oh, yes, I'm that woman."
You did not recognize her.
Not until she told me. And it wasn't like I had seen that much of her. I mean, apparently she had been on the bus But I had noticed the other woman who I thought was my counterpart as a, a female counterpart, babysitter on the bus, right? And so I had noticed her, and I hadn't really noticed this other woman that she was always sitting with, really. And she, at that time, that woman was very very shy. Okay, she said she never looked up from her shoes in those years. And so ever since 2004 now, so we're in our 17th year, those two women and I have been exchanging text messages, mostly about politics, since we share political views, and we sometimes talk about our classmates, most of whom we don't agree with politically. and we never did. I never did.
So another aspect of this card would be that aspect shows up in the life of the individual, regardless of what age they might be.
Yes.
And then according to where they are at that moment, they'll need to handle that situation.
Right. So that was a long story to get around to this point.
Exactly.
Which is this morning, the granddaughter of one of the two is still into horseback riding. I gave it up, years and years ago, 50 years ago. But that particular woman had been very active in horses and had been married to a veterinarian, and her granddaughter is now, I guess, almost 11 years old, but she's starting to get to be a good horsewoman. And we were talking about how all the boys were following her around like puppy dogs, and what she said, what this particular woman said was, well, at this point she still flicks them off. Right?
Like the tail of a horse, flick off the flies.
Yeah, get lost. And I said, oh yeah, I remember when I was one of those puppy dogs. Especially around the other woman who I thought was my fellow counselor. At the time, I thought she was, and she says, wait a minute, you got paid for that? I didn't get paid for that. So, okay.
So the woman that you're mentioning is one that embodies this energy, and that's why she could flick off the various puppy dogs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, maybe she did. When we graduated from high school, we went to the Winds because the high school was in Japan, and we were all Navy juniors from all over the country. So as a result, we never had a reunion for 30 years. And that's why we never saw each other. And then in 94, one of our classmates had looked up 5 classes and found all these people and said, let's get together in Glenwood Springs, Colorado for our reunion. We could meet anywhere because we're not going back to Japan for our reunion, right? And so we all did that. We've done that several times since. It's been kind of fun, but anyway, we've become fast friends on text messaging since then. No challenge to my wife. It's just it's an interesting, mostly political conversation. But
yeah, if we all understood that friends are important from both sexes, it's not
right.
The world would be very different, wouldn't it?
Right. And so we have fun together, and we were having this repartee about the granddaughter this morning, in which the granddaughter is right at this age of discernment. She hasn't quite reached puberty yet. And so she's just flicking off these puppy dog boys right now that are around the horse riding ring. But of course, that's going to change dramatically in the next couple of years.
Yes, dramatically. And it
Yeah.
will continue to change dramatically until pretty much out of college.
Righto. Yep. And so anyway, that's the long story. But
Well, working with dreams, I find that helps everyone, including young people who are just, their ego is still fresh and starting in the world,
yes.
because it will point out things that they cannot see.
Mhm.
And somehow, even if they don't immediately engage with it, it's an opening that it can return next year and next year and next year.
Mhm.
And then say, oh. And so it's kind of like the mentor that the other Page of Swords couldn't see. So a dream practice could offer a very important mentor, which could follow them throughout life.
Right. Absolutely. And it's when you're starting to separate this from that. I mean, in fairy tales, there's the story of the woman who has to separate poppy seeds or something like that. And that's the idea of separating this from that. And
Yeah, no one taught me anything related to this matter. I had to face the music all the way until who knows when, because I never quite settled down. So
yeah, right.
We know about that. It's great to be able to be introduced to some tools that are they're not models or matrices that have been written, but you're going right inside.
Right.
And there's all kinds of ways of interpreting dreams out there, not that they have to get right into the depth of psychology,
Right.
but through myth and through analogy and metaphor, they are being introduced to their own story.
Yeah, sure.
So their own story, instead of being unseen, the wing that they cannot see, that wing is in front of them, being shaped. And
Right.
they're being part of the shaping. So that might be something that
Right.
a new tarot deck can elucidate. Let's say if you were
Sure. And especially some of these very well-written tarot decks where they have good descriptions, although they're quite different, but still they're pointing back at the same event, the same types of things. Idris has given us a short dissertation on the suit of swords, which I think might be worth reading here. So I'm just going to read it out. It's on the chat.
Thank you.
The suit of swords tarot cards deal with the mental level of consciousness that is centered around the mind and the intellect. Swords mirror the quality of mind present in your thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs. Swords are often double-edged, and in this way, the suit of swords symbolizes the fine balance between intellect and power, and how these two elements can be used for good or evil. As such, the swords must be balanced by spirit, wands, and feeling, cups, to have the most positive effect. The suit of swords is associated with the element of air. Air is intangible and unseen, but also in constant movement. Air can be still and mostly unnoticed, or becoming a breeze or a fierce wind. It is powerful yet refreshing and cleansing. Symbolically, the air element relates to knowledge, action, power, and change. It is a masculine energy that can lead by force and power, even though it remains unseen. In a deck of playing cards, swords correspond to spades. And he says this is according to Biddy Tarot website. Okay,
Well,
I just,
we will also offer that the breath, which is turns into prana, which is
Yeah.
an inward movement of air, has another has an extra dimension, which is perhaps the fifth element,
mhm,
from what Idris has shared with us.
mhm,
So that would be what I was trying to point out, that if we are aware that there is another fifth element, which be taking all of these considerations inwardly, which is
right.
breathing techniques,
Mhm,
the air, using the air in order to contact our spring of wellness, which
mhm,
from its primordial essence,
right.
then you're that Princess of Sword may, or Page of Swords, is on its way to a good development.
Right, precisely. And I just want to share this once more because here our Princess of Swords, she's, she's seen everything. She hasn't been able to separate herself from it. I mean, I think maybe that's what you were
It's
starting.
exactly what I was trying to say. Yes.
Yeah, that
She's
she,
at the top of it, and there's illumination, but she has no inner self that's being awarded little steps towards her evolution.
right.
It's outside of her, that ghost figure in the white,
Yeah,
and she's
and
not even seeing it.
right. And for her, it's like for all modern young people, they're faced with so many more facts and images than we were ever faced with in our youth. You know, life used to be much simpler, right? We'd have the local news, and maybe every 3 months there'd be a murder in the local community, but you wouldn't hear about 12 mass murders over one weekend, which is what we had this past weekend. So,
Mm.
so young people have a much tougher road to hoe these
Well, in
days.
some ways, they're being forced to
Yeah.
utilize that other dimension of the air. Otherwise, they will have mental problems.
And they'll be overwhelmed, right?
And become ill.
Yeah, and Justin says, I need to tell you all that a dear frequent guest here, Manuela Z, has been hospitalized. It seems that she has corona for the second time within a few months. Oh, that's troubling, because Manuela is a friend of ours who frequently has worked with us on this panel, actually, and in our advanced reading group. So thank you, Justin, for letting us know that. It need not be closed down. We can make another channel and continue talking Jung in relation to Tarot, I Ching, and whatever. I don't know what he's saying there. Maybe he's, would you agree that metropoles feels more attractive to young people than to the elderly? Yeah, I think
Metropole? What is metropole?
I think he means cities. Cities feel more attractive to young people. They want to go out and party and have a lot of stuff going on, whereas older people are saying, okay, enough.
We've been there, done that.
Been there, done that. I want to chill out for a while.
And it didn't, and we know where that's going.
Right.
Well, it perhaps also has to do with, if you come from there, if you were born into it, if you were born into a busy city, then at some point, perhaps you then choose to get out of the city, because being in New York for a long time, many of the young people that were actually from the area, they would live there during the holidays, they would leave and go somewhere else. So to some degree, that has a double-edged sort of validity that can go either way. Now,
Right.
for those who don't who live outside, then those would be the ones coming into the city all the time.
Right.
So there's always the grass better on the other side.
Right. And there, we're going to have a speaker on the 5th of June in the Wisdom Path Colloquia. And his name is Jason Smith, and he's written a book called Religious But Not Religious. And one of the important points he makes in that book is that we all need to have a release from rigid structure all the time. And so partying is a way to do that. But we also need containment. In other words, if you just party and then keep partying,
Exactly.
you're going to drive
You're derailed.
You're going to derail your life. And so, you know, I was thinking about Navy ships. On Navy ships, it's if the troops are on a ship at sea for like 2 months, they really want to get out and party when they go into port, right? And if they're not allowed to party, oh my God, it's like the end of the world, right?
Yeah, it has that kind of what you can't do, and then you know that then that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and when you're on a ship, you're probably, you know, unless you're an officer, and most people aren't officers. So on an aircraft carrier, you have 5,000 men, of which 4,900 are enlisted men, and they live in bunk beds 3 high or sometimes 4 high in their berthing spaces, and sometimes they hot rack, like on submarines, they hot rack. And so
what is the hot rack?
Hot rack means they share a bed, and one guy gets up and the other guy goes to sleep on the same bed.
Oh, wow.
So in submarines they do that. And so, you know,
how do you spell that? Hot rack?
Hot rack, HOTRACK. And I need to make a response here to Mistel. Mistel, you used a word that was moderated by YouTube, not by me, but since I can't understand the comment that was moderated, I'm not going to show it. I'm going to hide it. But, you know, it's just be careful of the language you use on YouTube, because YouTube itself will moderate. So it wasn't me that moderated it. But since I can't understand what you were saying, I'm going to have to just leave it as hidden. And I apologize for that, but that's what is happening. So that's an answer to your question mark. And you used the word TEAR, and I don't know whether that word, you intend that word to mean tear or tear. And so again, I don't understand the comment that you made. So I decided to not show that comment. So, okay, moving on then. Let's show one more deck, which is the Splendor Solis deck, and we'll have their brief description.
Yeah, and I will share that there's so many decks that feature completely different realities.
Exactly.
Some like there's the alchemistic woodcut tarot. Is behind the Gnostic and all of the background of religion and so on, which is completely different alchemical kind of thing.
Right.
Which in some way this deck makes reference, but it's more accessible.
Right. So they all point back toward the same general idea, and that's the point of this multi-year long discussion that we're having here. So, okay, so this is the Priestess Royal of Sparkling Air, the alchemy of the Page of Swords. And here's what they say. I am Priestess Royal of Sparkling Air, inner alchemy of the Page of Swords. I awaken your wise and subtle thoughts that you choose dexterously amongst the substances of the many-storied world, avoiding careless harm to yourself or others. Dear alchemist, through me, you become participant in the world of thought. I guide the page's courtly role, helping rule the sylphs, subtle peoples of the air. Work with us, elevate all converse to being an openness and clarity, not confusion. As temple custodian of sparkling air's great praise, I gather all gifts from the tree of sparkling air, receive with care the powerful mind stuff of storied thought, for words are indeed swords, SWORDS, which can cleave the way or cut and kill. You stand or fall upon your stories, so form them well. Practice my thought-forming arts. Discover your power to shape thought with clarity and fine perceptions, attracting life-affirming ideas to live within them. I am the very substance of story, the golden thread by which all tales unfold. I will help you explore your house of thought, for untold rooms are yet to be discovered. I have care of many goodly thoughts whose power can heal and help. I will bring them to your mind. Now, that's a good one.
It's a very positive, so at least it has a guidance,
Right,
instead of chaos.
right.
Um,
And it is still pointing out that it's a complicated world out there.
yes, it says master the arts,
Right.
meaning in the arts of learning how to create narrative,
Right,
because the word is not just speaking, it is
Right.
written, it is listened to, and it's spoken, written, listened to, and so those various ways, and spoken, listened, written, and
Mhm.
read. So
Yeah.
I knew there were four.
Yeah.
So that's one of the most powerful of all the suits, because it works on those 4 levels.
Mhm.
It uses
do you
a lot of
think
the
that-
senses at the same time. It uses the hearing, it uses the eyes, it uses the voice. And so that's 3 right there.
And do you think that spoken, listen, written, and read apply to the 4 personality types or not? Or to the
You mean for
4 suits?
for the 4 suits?
Yeah.
That may be something to consider, that may
Yeah.
very well be well paired.
Mhm.
I would say then the page would signify speaking, because the youngest one will just la 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 blah blah blah, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And
sure.
it doesn't, it's not right.
Yeah,
And then-
babies do that. They,
Right. And
then
then
they hear
second,
parents talking and they go blah 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 blah.
and then I would say listening would be second, because listening and talking, it's very close, because which one came first, right?
Mhm.
And then after that, reading and writing would be the last one, because it's
Yeah.
a skill that uses the hands
Mhm.
and must also know language.
Yeah.
So that could be. That's very, very, very interesting that you mentioned that. And at the end, the 5th suit would be the impact that it has when you use it inwardly,
Yeah. And
the transcendence aspect of it.
And mothers are always telling stories to their children, telling them things, think about this, and
Right.
my
So-
mother was a classic storyteller, and just a tremendous storyteller. And sometimes my sister, my brother would say, "Oh, mommy, that's not true." And she'd say, "That's my story and I'm sticking to it."
Right. See, so they're starting to, when they hear, they're starting to, no, to
Yeah, they're
make
starting.
connections.
Yeah, they're
make
starting to hear a
connection.
metaphor and realizing that the
Exactly.
metaphor isn't physically
And they
true.
speak, and then they speak, and then later on they learn to write. So writing and reading comes later.
Yeah, yep.
Mhm.
So very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we go on to the next
Yeah,
card?
and that one has these cards sometimes feature, like that one has a star on the throat,
Okay,
like
just
a
a
blue
minute. Let me.
star on the throat. And
Yes.
yeah, so maybe we'll say, since it's related to speech and listening, and the fifth chakra rules all of that,
Mhm.
maybe that there's something related to that is from the throat, that all of these things get put out.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the tree is growing out of her, yeah, kind of around her upper body.
And she's looking, she's not looking head on. She's looking side as she's reflecting on something.
Mhm, mhm.
So she's using, the quality to reflect, which is a thinking quality.
Yeah. So Mistel says, I need duct tape on my mouth and boxing gloves during Mercury retrograde, only so I can't type. I couldn't push a duck in the wall. Okay, that's funny. All right, since I have this deck up, we'll start with this deck going forward. So now the next one is the Knight of Swords. And again, he has a star in his throat. And I'll just turn the page and read.
Well,
this.
right now he's grown some wings there.
Yes, definitely. He's grown wings. And
he's
so,
standing on top of the half moon. So his reflections are being brought on board somehow.
mhm, right. So he's the priest. I am the priest royal of sparkling air, inner alchemy of the Knight of Swords. I awaken a richness of thoughts and ideas, and I'm firm in friendship. I dwell beneath the glorious wings of the Divic cherub of air, human-faced, who brings new names and thoughts for the Aquarian times. Dear alchemist, I mediate all storing and restoring that forms your body of thought. I guide the knight's courtly role, helping rule the sylphs, subtle peoples of the air. Work with us, generate thoughtful conversations, make opportunities to choose the initiate path where good thought shapes good word into good deed. As Templar Cantor of sparkling air, great praise, I tell the tales of the tree of sparkling air, traveling with daemons who personify life's questions. Through me, you come to know thoughts, messengers, the diva's angels, practiced by liberating arts. Bring hermetic studies to inform your path. Ambassadors of the seven wandering stars will aid your discoveries of their names and natures. When you are attuned, you will know your thought body to be an offshoot of divine mind. I will help you choose well the tales you tell yourself about yourself, that they bring you to your own domain and the light of the friend. Ah, very good. I like that.
Yes, it's a very positive. Now he's making offerings. He has an experience, and he's making offerings that allow the recipient to grow some wings.
Right. And
what is he holding in his hand? What is that dark thing or something there? Can you?
Well, I don't know. It looks like a shell or something.
Can you get close?
I'll try. Let me see what I can do.
I cannot tell at all what that is.
No, I
and
can't.
There's something black there too.
Yeah, the black is a shadow.
It is. I mean, it's the only black thing that dark in the whole thing, in the whole picture.
Yeah,
It's,
it's the shadow of this thing, it
and,
seems.
and that thing looks like a feather,
Yeah,
kind of feather or
right. It could be a feather.
a
Yeah,
wing, you know. So he's
right.
holding something there.
Yeah, I cannot tell what that is.
Or maybe that it's coming, the birth that's coming out of that dark space. He's
Yeah,
holding something
it
with
does look like
promise.
it looks like it could be a fetus, definitely.
Right. So that may be the birth of something that's being released from being inside that thing.
That person, yeah.
Yeah.
Very
And the
interesting.
triangle on the top is one of the elements in the tree of life and so on that
Yeah.
represents one of the, higher.
Yeah, it's representing the air signs here,
Mhm, exactly.
and also the yellow color in
Mhm.
the swords is representing that it's air.
Yeah. We really
Um,
enjoy the bounty of the framing. It's very beautiful.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
Mhm.
And this moon has a face,
It's
right,
facing down,
facing down in a way.
or it could be the sun face. Something's facing down that he's embodying it now instead of
Yeah,
it being
right.
outside of his grasp.
That's the reflecting side of the moon, perhaps, and he's standing on the reflection, so he understands things more.
Mhm.
And so I think it's very interesting that at this time, which was 1582, when the Splendor Solis was published,
Oh,
so that's the 16th century, and so that's when the average human being at that time experienced only as much information in a lifetime as happens to us when we read the Sunday New York Times, one edition. So that if you go to the bodega and you pick up a Sunday New York Times, that volume of information is the same amount as a person of the 16th century would have in a lifetime. Okay.
well, many weren't literate. They
And many
couldn't
weren't
read
literate, sure.
or write.
Yeah.
So there we go. They learn by listening and speaking.
Right. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in these descriptions for this Splendor Solis stack. I think it's terrific in that way.
Yeah, at that time they had sculptures. And so the
Right.
sculptures in the ballet that I wrote, well, one of the things when they used their hands, I took it from the saints. Because
Mhm.
at that time, people would know what the sculpture represented
Mhm.
because the hands had a gesture
Yeah.
or
Right.
a mudra and different things. So that's
Right.
how because they weren't literate or,
Mhm.
couldn't.
So they were speaking in imagery.
Mhm.
Right. And yeah, that's interesting. Okay, let's go back to the She-Wolf deck because this Knight of Swords is very interesting. And it's the one that I sent out on the notice for today. And
Oh, yes, you did.
yeah, and
Well, that's that's a symbol of in the Egyptian
yes,
pantheon.
right. So
like
so this says Capricorn and Aquarius, keys, dynamic, fluid, visionary, mastery. The artwork elimination. A man stands on the rings of Saturn, reaching for the star belly of the ancient Egyptian goddess Nuit. Behind him lies Uranus, the ruling planet of Aquarius. Below, the pyramids of Giza merge with the desert. The planet Saturn weighs very little, but this knight's energy is so dynamic that he is weightless. Nuit is the grandmother goddess of the universe. All potential is created in her womb. Here he invokes her power and uses it to transform lessons into beauty, art into science, and back again. The pyramid represents the heart of longevity and the amazing visions that can be birthed from preeminence. The light reading is: the youthful master of his element, the Knight of Swords, takes the reins with creativity and brings it to new, unparalleled places. Here we have the confidence of nascence. This brazen energy can lend itself to cockiness and becoming caught in the buffet of life, tasting everything but truly digesting nothing. If we take this lesson seriously and engage fully with everything we encounter, there's absolutely no limit to what we can achieve. To view everyone as a teacher, everything as a guide, deeply devouring it all. This card is asking us to remain vigilantly awake. The more aware we are, the more information from the universe we will receive, leading us down the path towards our fruition. And the shadow side, the risk with this card that we may be so enveloped in our excitement that we miss crucial lessons, clues, and guidance that would help us understand ourselves. We may become easily distracted by beauty, substances, or simply the pull of research and study many subjects at once. There is so much to be and to do, but if we spread ourselves too thin, we will only ever be able to skim the surface of many fields. Saturn asks us to go the distance and leave no rock unturned, even if the eventuality is that we abandon the path we are on. We should see it through as far as we can. And the mantra is, I become masterful through awareness and determination. Okay. So, Gilda, do you have some thoughts there?
Yes, what I find interesting is that Saturn is the ancient one, the one that rules old age, and is Earth, Capricorn's and Earth, and he's walking downwards towards the bottom. He's reaching up, but he's walking down. So that's kind of and he's walking down out of the entire field, but yet he's focused on reaching up towards the belly of all that can be.
Right.
So that has that kind of uncertainty that the knight may not is not completely, riding in control.
Right. And I do have some serious experience with this because, and the way I describe it is that, I started many things in my lifetime, but I left them before I saw them through to fruition in many cases. Right. And so, I was active in the Marine Corps active duty for 3 years, and then I decided to go to reserve. I kept my Marine Corps career going, but I did it in reserve. And then I went on to law school, then to business school. And, then I went and founded a business in Japan. And then I had to figure out how to get back from Japan, but I kept leaving things that I had built up, whether it was, a credential or, something that I had actually built, like the company in Japan. And so it was finally when I was nearly 50 that I entered into a business that I did stick with continuously from 1990 and really to today. I mean, I've had ups and downs with the trials, the going through it, but I've been involved in the computer operation of hospitals, basically, since 1990. And in that process, I was able to take one company public, and then my partners flicked me off, so so that I have done another one, and I've stuck with it to the end. And so I remember telling. So I learned that lesson around 1990, right? That you have to stop being the Knight of Swords and start being the a little bit smarter. But I one time told my one of my staff members she was worried that we were going to shut the office down. And at one point during my practice of law, I had bought a semicircular desk that had a wingspan of 7 feet. So it was a circle 7 feet in diameter, but only half of the circle. And then I sat in the middle, and I could actually get 5 or 6 people around. It was like a conference table.
How beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful. And so I told her, don't worry, if you come in here and that desk is still here, we're still in operation, right? If you come in and it's gone, we're not. And so later on, when we broke up that particular aspect of the business, she and her husband conned me into giving them that desk.
Oh.
And her husband made a bar out of it. And so it's really cool. He used the beautiful 7-foot teak desktop as a wonderful bar. That
did you have it designed, or you found it somewhere?
Well, I found it somewhere. And
well, I think your trajectory shows your artistic ability was always there. So even though you were also an air sign, so you juggled a lot of things until at some point you had to nail down something. But you still, if you observe, you're still doing you're still walking through many branches of the tree at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just
keeps you fresh.
Yeah, it keeps me fresh. It keeps me doing things even
and
many
it keeps
years
you with
later.
A smile and such
Right.
and a great attitude.
Absolutely. And so people who follow this YouTube channel think I'm not doing anything outside, but actually I am. And someday that will be more known. But
yes, it's Libra's a cardinal sign, so you're not sitting around, letting
no,
grow under your feet.
Right.
So,
okay.
So the air quality, that's what I was trying to share, that when these qualities are isolated, as this is what this represents in a spread or a reading, they work in conjunction with other things.
Right.
Isolated completely, it's kind of it's difficult to
one-sided.
Yes, it's
I mean, lives are very complicated things.
It can be stale. You read 2 different decks,
right,
or 2 different types of pages completely and totally.
Right, but this is terrific. Wait until I show you this next image, because this is the Prince of Swords in the Starman deck. And
you know what I did? I took the so I do use pendulum work, yes.
Oh yeah.
So I calibrate it. David Hawkins has a scale of calibration of 1 to 1,000. You are aware of it, right? Well, I calibrate the different decks. Okay, and you'd be absolutely surprised as to which rate high and which don't.
And Justin says, and so are we. He says we're still staying up at night to participate here. And Justin lives in Denmark. And so in Denmark, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and he's still participating here. So
Thank
do
you.
appreciate that. But here's the Starman's Prince of Swords. And so this is exactly like me. You can tell the pioneers by the arrows in their chest, right? This is what happens to the
Very
Prince.
decadent.
Yeah, this is what happens to the Prince of Swords. He's full of wounds and you know, one way or another. And you know, my whole experience with being you know, a swordsman, which would suggest a military man, was after I did it for 23 years, I broke my leg.
Oh.
That was the end of that. And so now
You
I
were
haven't.
stopped.
Pardon?
You were stopped.
I was stopped in
On
being
your dead on your steps.
I was stopped from being a prince of swords, let's say, but I became.
And you never saw that you never had an inkling that this you needed to do, that you needed to stop and do something.
Well, I didn't, because you know, there was a time in my life when my reserve duties, and I was being paid, of course, each day that I worked, I got paid for. So it was like having a part-time job, and it kept me going even when I was going through bad times. And so anyway,
overextending. You never felt you were overextending.
well, not doing my reserve duty. I suspect my wife thought I was overextending because I was spending 1 weekend a month doing it, and 2 weeks in the summer I would be away all the time. But it was well worth it, because I got healthcare out of it. And right now, as I pass through lots of doctor's offices at my age, I'm very grateful for the fact that I have health insurance for myself and my wife. So
Does that cover a nutritionist?
it covers everything. Yep.
Because that you know, nowadays that's a lot is cured with food. And you know, I think maybe because you've carried so much that you're carrying it, and you need to physically.
Yeah, well, I'm going to
start losing it.
Yeah, I expect I'm going to be losing it by not formally dieting, but by having 8 weeks of radiation treatments. I expect that may have an effect on me. Okay, so the Prince of Swords. Here's what the Starman says. Prince of Swords, I live by my ideals. Okay, so the Prince of Swords is here. Danger is imminent. The time has come to act. It's now or never. This explosive combination of fire and air invites some form of decisive action. Fiery and dogmatically determined to follow his principles, the prince is willing to sacrifice himself for some lofty cause. He understands this is a burden and will endure the hardship and punishment that may be inflicted as a consequence. His quest is ultimately exciting and relentless. To manifest things truly worth achieving, protect or propagate the ideas or beliefs we most value will always demand that we surrender or destroy something we hold dear. The artwork of the Starman Tarot required phenomenally long hours of working into the night for months on end. I pored over the details of each card, constantly reworking them until I felt they captured the spirit of the deck. In the long, cold, gray winter months of a British winter that was particularly shocking after living in Bali, I frequently felt like throwing the towel, exhausted. However, from long experience, I recognized I was treading the tightrope. I knew there was something past the point of giving up. I summoned the willpower to imagine the good this project could generate, faces of people lighting up, and the clarity and creative inspiration received. This energy rippled out into the world. Immediately, I revived. a surge of renewed energy and spark of inspiration to carry on. The breakthrough, a new vista would open up. The I can replace the I can't. It's as if Providence wants to make sure we are fully committed before gifting us the possibility of doing something extraordinary or beyond our normal capacity. Our entire being is being augmented, something vital added. To fight a cause when all appears lost, to be willing to go to the places that most terrify you because you implicitly understand that something of tremendous value awaits, calls forth the vitas of life. In receiving this gift, we discover one thought: our small self is no longer the prime faculty determining our actions. We are guided by a higher power to do what must be done. The Prince of Swords embodies this energy. The huge raven signifies the arrival of this vital force. The prince himself is modeled on a young punk rocker who embodied the energy of the tragic rock icon Sid Vicious, heading for a similar untimely end until one night a drug score went horribly wrong, leaving him almost battered to death. That night, he had a vision of Jesus telling him that he could give up and it would be just fine, or he could go back into his life and help impact the lives of sick children. As soon as he was out of the hospital, he got fit, running races and gaining sponsorship. Instead of vodka, he drank green juice. Instead of hustling for drugs, he hustled corporations to contribute money for hospital equipment. He became unstoppable. What decisive action do you need to take? And the reverse is too much fire and he quickly burns himself out. Too much air and his leadership will be over-exacting and demanding, out of touch with reality and the life-giving principle of love. And so, I guess you could say that I was out of touch with reality the day that I broke my leg. But do you have comments on this image?
Well, these cards are very, one has to be in a certain state to move into this and extract what is necessary for the particular co-creative process. We're just wondering what these white figures in the back or side that keep showing up. Are these the guiding angels that are behind the mayhem that's going on?
Yeah, I think they are they're the Holy Ghost or guiding
Here we have
angels.
3. In the page we had 1. I didn't count. Here there's 1 manifested and 2 unmanifested.
Right. And there's also a bunch of sticks of dynamite.
Yes, I see that. I see that.
So he can blow himself up also.
Right. And he has all those chains and things in his pants. And he's been partly crucified. Right.
And Justin says perhaps this prince needs a vacation now and then.
Yeah, and he's still going for it, even though he's been partly crucified. So there's something kind of apocalyptic about this guy.
Yeah, and so I've been crucified many times in doing many things. I broke my leg, then I practiced law for 5 years, and after studying law for 3 and found I detested the practice of law, so I had to move on. And then I went to business school, and it was 15 courses in statistics by different names. I finished in 1979, and I haven't done a regression analysis since. not a single one. And so
You were clearly not doing that which your soul, your calling was wanted you to do.
that's clear. Yes, that's quite clear. And you know, even though I did succeed in business and have succeeded a number of times in business in different environments, none of it is because of going to business school. All of it had to do with my leadership training in the Marine Corps.
Well,
believe,
look at that, you see.
believe it or not.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so anyway, this guy sort of represents me circa 1990. and it's interesting that Eva Rider, who is a friend of mine out in California, who is a psychotherapist and a tarot aficionado, she doesn't like this deck, and because she doesn't like the imagery of the deck. And while I think the imagery is somewhat busy although I particularly like this card because I think it really expresses the point, right, that I was making. But I really like the descriptions that this deck has. I really think that they're just terrific. And so anyway.
But the images are over the top.
Yeah, the images are clearly over the top. And, so
imagine if you do a Celtic cross or something, you have 10 of these images bouncing around.
Right,
but
right.
I can understand because the life of a rock and roller at that time was very similar to that.
Sure.
The end of the century is the debauchery and the whole thing at the end of the century, that in its full regalia.
Right, and David Bowie is the model for this.
Exactly. So
for this deck, and he had a up and down career, and he actually was the star man, right?
Right.
And so he's like the man who fell to earth type of thing, right? He actually used to wear outfits that had stars on them and so on.
Right, he wore everything.
Yeah.
Female outfit, he was female, this, that. I mean, there wasn't a thing he didn't make himself into.
Right. And so he definitely went through that stage.
Yeah.
So Justin says these cards look much like a club in Copenhagen where I went for punk concerts in the 80s and early 90s. Played there once myself with my band, not a musician anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a very select. New York City would have that too.
Oh, sure.
At the wee hours and places, the Limelight was a church that was turned into a nightclub.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever hear of the Limelight?
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, so what it was a church with, Gothic points and stained glass windows and the whole thing, darkish because it was old.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing was turned into a nightclub of music, not only just dance, but bands and punk rock and the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's
it's very weird.
Yeah, and that's all this
a lot of
breaking
stories
the
came out of that. I was
sure.
a photographer and I wanted to photograph musicians and so I didn't last very long. One night or two, and I said, "No, I can't do this."
You can't do this. No. Yeah. Well, another example would be the tradition of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people used to go every week and see the same movie.
Exactly. Yeah, I saw it for the same reason, because everybody was seeing it. But when I looked at it, it didn't work for me. I wasn't that type.
Yeah, well, I found the same thing, but
Although it has very, it's got Susan Sarandon and, very good acting, but
Mhm.
this is those cult films.
yes,
Very famous.
Sure,
It kept
sure.
playing every week.
Yep.
It played in
Absolutely.
your city as well. And this is in Miami, Florida. It played every single week.
Right. So let's, I guess, I don't know.
It has that look, absolutely.
So Gilda, you're the one that's with me on the panel. So shall we go for the mature members of the court, or do you want to just call it quits here? Because we've been going for an hour and a half already.
It's up to you. I'm fine with either way.
Yeah.
If you want to just go through them and then we'll do something else next week, that's fine. But if you want to leave them for next week, that's okay too.
Yeah, let's leave them for next week because I'll just
You
do
need to get some rest.
Yeah, I need to get rest and
Yeah, I'll put in the chat for those who may be interested is the Jung platform, jungplatform.com.
yeah,
that I was mentioning
youngplatform.com.
to you, since this is for
I'll
those
mention it on
who
YouTube.
wish. Yes. And they have lots, they can deal with fairy tales and that. So that's when I said that you could marry this to the Jung platform, is that they don't have any course on utilizing the tarot as a form of getting in touch with individuation. And
Right.
they are, which I'm reading right now, the book written by a Jung analyst on the tarot. You have that book, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it would be something that that would be add to their Jungplatform.com, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great site.
Yeah.
And I should mention
And they had they just had a free summit. So
Yeah.
I was going to send to you. There's some things I could send to you, but I think, I don't know. Would you like me to send you some links of interviews with Peter Kingsley and Mary Stein?
Actually, I can't cope with more links. I have heard Peter Kingsley in many contexts.
So you've heard his interviews?
Yes, I've heard his
Since you were doing one of his books?
Yeah, I wanted to do Catafalque, but he called me up and he was very kind of semi-nasty to me. He was not nasty, but he was respectfully nasty.
He didn't want you to cover his book?
Yep, he didn't want me to talk about his book. So I said, fine, you're lost, man, because if I talk about the books, then they're going to get more coverage. But sometimes writers don't understand. Writers don't understand about marketing. Right. Okay. So I want to tell you about one thing, which is a lecture which is going to be on Wednesday night. It's transgressions of innate moral codes and transgressions in service of the self. And it's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern time this says Thursday, but I think, I guess it is Thursday. I was thinking it was Wednesday, but anyway. And it's with Michael Conforti, who's a famous.
Yes, I believe he interviewed. Didn't he interview Mary Stein?
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, I just saw him interviewing Mary Stein.
Right. Okay, but there's the link for it, and I'll put the link on YouTube as well.
I just saw him interview. The name was familiar, and he has an accent, so I thought he was Italian or something. Is he Italian?
No, I don't think so. He lives in Mystic, Connecticut.
Oh, so maybe it's not the same person.
And so here's the link for the YouTube audience. And so sounds like a very good free lecture about moral codes and so on. And I'm planning to attend because it's free. But it's also, I think it's also the first lecture in a 2-year-long course that you can sign up to participate in, which is a big deal, and they give certifications out of it and so on.
Okay, on the same topic.
Well, or it's on, archetypal things going on in society and so on. So it's
and
good
it's
thing.
only one presenter, or?
I think so. I think it's just Michael Assisi. It's only Michael Assisi. I'm sorry, Michael Conforti. This Thursday night. After that, if you look at his website, which is Assisi Institute, he has a lot of others involved in his website, and
There's a lot going on.
right. And
It's overwhelming.
and one came across a book today called by Stephen Meyer called Return
Well, you
of
haven't
the
come
God.
across Jeffrey Martin, Dr.
I
Jeffrey
don't
Martin.
recall that name.
The Finders is a book called The Finders.
Okay, no, I don't know that book.
And he's just a research. He's a research on fundamental well-being or ways of enlightenment.
Right.
And he offers a comprehensive book on locations, like where are you now? What does fundamental well-being, which is a form of being enlightened and not in your mindset, what does that look like in different areas? And he's designed a lot of courses you might want to, and I'm sure he'd be okay, I think so, if you presented that book.
Well, I'll look
It's
into
called The Finders
The Finders. Okay.
by Dr. Jeffrey Martin. You can find him on YouTube, and you can watch. Are you aware of Buddha on the Gas Pump?
Yes.
Okay, so you can find an interview. He's probably been interviewed on Buddha on the Gas Pump. And you can also find something on YouTube. He really is well known, and the book is called The Finders.
Okay, terrific. So I'm having no shortage of people to interview on the wisdom path. So in June, we have 3 planned. First, as of now, I have other invitations out, but the first is Jason Smith on the 5th of June, and he's talking about religious but not religious. Then on the 12th, we have Linda McFadden talking about In Bridget's Footsteps, Return of the Divine Feminine. And that will be June 12th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. All of them are at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And on the 26th, we have Unveiling Sophia, Heart Wisdom in the Age of Technology. By Anne Elizabeth Taylor, and
okay, well, you've got it all set up.
Well, I've got
the
those.
Finders would be something not just about a philosophy. This is about engaging in practice, and it's not the religion. Is not. This is fundamental well-being. Enlightenment as fundamental well-being, and what that looks like, reciting there what the life appears like, but so it includes, it's about not only this is what we have found. And
Mhm.
he's interviewed enlightened people for many, many years all
Mhm.
over the place.
Mhm.
So it's an active portal that has practices
Mhm.
to for those who wish. You have your practice.
Mm.
You've shared with me that your practice is to read, and by reading and engaging with the text,
Right.
you become you arrive at moving your evolutionary steps towards
Yeah,
your
because I underline text, and I underline the things that have deep meaning to me.
right. I put little dots, and I used to afterwards take a notebook and then write down those things, and then I
Mhm.
would have an outline of what was in the book. But I
Yeah.
gave that up because I was busy now practicing.
Right. Well,
Writing dreams every
you
day. So,
come to a certain time in your life where you have to stop learning and start teaching. But here's
yeah, I
right.
haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. Well, I mean, not completely stop learning, but I'm going to show you that my
Yes, you never stop growing.
right. But
Well,
okay, so here's this is my second reading of 7 Pillars of Wisdom, and this
yeah.
particular page is okay. So it's 7 Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence of Arabia. And in this particular thing, which I'm going to read tomorrow, probably, I decide it's a beautifully written book, and everybody should read this book in order to appreciate what it is, because there's just so much that's beautifully a grabber, for one thing, and it really has a lot of wisdom in it.
You really resonated with it.
Yes, and so
Yeah,
I'm not
I've
reading
heard of it.
I'm not reading the whole book, but I am reading. I am going to read about 4 chapters that relate to the only traitor that T.E. Lawrence ran into during
By
the
traitor. Oh, somebody
traitor
did him in. You mean?
or tried to. Yeah.
Okay.
I think T.E. Lawrence got the better part of that.
But
Yeah,
I've heard of the book. It's
well
known.
it's the basis of Lawrence of Arabia, actually. But I'll just read 3 paragraphs of it. The first chapter, the first 3 paragraphs in the book, just to give you an appreciation of the richness of the writing. So this is the first thing that he says in the book after the introduction. Some of the evil of my tale may have been inherent in our circumstances. For years, we lived anyhow with one another in the naked desert, under the indifferent heaven. By day, the hot sun fermented us, and we were dizzied by the beating wind. At night, we were stained by dew and shamed into pettiness by the innumerable silences of stars. We were a self-centered army without parade or gesture, devoted to freedom, the second of man's creeds, a purpose so ravenous that it devoured all our strength, a hope so transcendent that our earlier ambitions faded in its glare. As time went by, our need to fight for the ideal increased to an unquestioning possession, riding with spur and rein over our doubts. Willy-nilly, it became a faith. We had sold ourselves into its slavery, manacled ourselves together in the chain gang, bowed ourselves to serve its holiness with all our good and ill content. The mentality of ordinary human slaves is terrible. They have lost the world. And we had surrendered, not body alone, but soul to the overmastering greed of victory. By our own act, we were drained of morality, of volition, of responsibility like dead leaves in the wind. The everlasting battle stripped us care of our own lives or of others. We had ropes around our necks and on our heads prices, which showed that the enemy intended hideous tortures for us if we were caught. Each day, some of us passed, and the living knew themselves just sentient puppets on God's stage. Indeed, our taskmaster was merciless so long as our bruised feet could stagger forward on the road. The weak envied those tired enough to die, for success looked so remote and failure a near and certain, if sharp, release from toil. We lived always in the stretch or sag of nerves, either on the crest or in the trough of waves of feeling. This impotency was bitter to us and made us live only for the seen horizon, reckless what spite we inflicted and endured, since physical sensation showed itself meanly transient. Gusts of cruelty, perversions, lusts ran lightly over the surface without troubling us for the moral laws which it seems to hedge about these silly accidents must be yet fainter words. We had learned that there were pangs too sharp, griefs too deep, ecstasies too high for our finite selves to register. When emotion reached this pitch, the mind choked and memory went white till the circumstances were humdrum once more. Okay, so that's the first.
Wow, it's very
three
ravaged. Quite
Pardon?
ravaged.
Yeah, it's quite an interestingly written book. I just
Sounds like say the Desert Fathers. Is he part of the Desert Fathers?
and he talks about them, and
Is that a biography or a fiction?
well, it's an autobiography of this 2-year period. Okay, so he's telling the story of his experience in World
And what
War.
were they doing there?
Well, they were organizing these 30 Bedouin tribes who had been fighting each other in blood feuds for thousands of years over wells. They were fighting in the desert over wells for thousands of years. And so he had to organize them into an army that, fought the Ottoman Empire and defeated it. The Ottoman Empire.
And then what happened to the well sharing?
Well, then they sort of developed into nation states, but nothing much has changed because he was with Hashemite Bedouins, and the Hashemite Bedouins are in Jordan. And nothing's changed. I mean, about 3-4 weeks ago, King Abdullah II was nearly assassinated by his brother. So they're still into that stuff. And so anyway.
It's amazing.
And so
that whole area is very amazing.
Yes.
The whole Middle East and
Yep. I spent 6 months in Arab dress over 23 visits to Saudi Arabia between 2002 and 2013.
And the Dubai, the city that is built on top of, if the water rises, isn't that just going to go underwater?
What's going underwater?
That city, the Dubai. And
Dubai.
Emirates?
Yeah, Dubai has built, the palms and also the world. One of the things they built was the world, where they were reclaiming land out of sand that they were dredging up and putting in the shape of certain countries, right? Making separate little islands out in the bay for each country. Well, it didn't work out too well because the currents in that part of the world go northeast, and we're just washing it away.
Are
And
they aware that if the water level rises, all that was just going to change? Or
it's quite obvious. Yeah, I was
Oh.
working in that business area for some years, and I have toured those as a prospective investor, and oh my God, it's
but
very
it must be
very
like
obvious.
somebody says like another planet, that the construction is the modernity of it is.
Yeah, so they
Otherworldly.
built these things and they put hotels out on them and everything, and they're just washing away.
Are they washing away? I mean,
Yeah, literally.
what that's what the first thing that came to my
Yeah,
awareness, like, oh, all that money into something that
well, they
to
have more.
deserts.
They have more money than Cretius, but it's
Yeah.
quite clear. I toured some homes that were for sale on the Palm, which was well, one of the palms there. I forget which one exactly, but I was out on this palm, and it was very clear that they're only like 6 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
The bottom of these things, and if sea level rises just a little bit, these homes are just not going to be there anymore.
Yeah, that's not going to be there.
Right. And
So
so
it's crazy thing.
many parts of Dubai itself are like that. So you're quite right.
Yeah, something about that.
Yeah,
So maybe the Noah's Ark is moving north, like
seems so. I mean, it's
Afghanistan and
Yeah,
Syria and all of those places. That's why there's all of that going on.
yeah, it's an interesting place. It's a very interesting place.
It's very ancient. That whole area is very ancient.
Yeah, that's definitely true, and lots of ancient customs there and so on. And Gilda says, true, Miami is built on swampland. We have that, all you have to do is look at a map of Florida, and you see that the whole center of the state is the Everglades.
Yeah, when they had to dig to make those buildings, they would have to use a lot of concrete to build the foundations because you hit sand.
Yep.
And why it's not it's swamp.
Right.
But they built it, and the real estate is so strong. There've been some articles about that, and they don't listen. They think that the party's forever, and that it's such a powerful real estate. It's very powerful,
Right.
and so if it happens, an article on maybe Rolling Stones magazine, and then people will be standing on the cars, everything, the water,
Right.
all the shorts and the
Right.
the tan bodies.
Yeah, it is funny.
Yeah.
So,
But whatever is coming.
Que sera, sera.
It's so much information, but none of it seems to channel as oh, hello, this is truth, so let's pay attention.
Yeah,
It's all about
it happens over a long period of time. You take it in my city, which is Annapolis, Maryland, and it's not always flooding, but it often floods with high tides. And during Hurricane Isabel in 2003, the whole center of the city was flooded and caused billions of dollars of damage. And the U.S. Naval Academy has 5 wind tunnels in basements out right next to the Severn River, and those all flooded. And one of those wind tunnels is a Mach 1 wind tunnel. In other words, it's a wind tunnel that can produce the speed of sound. And
Oh,
and so it's extremely powerful. And you know, when they run that up, then the lights dim here.
oh,
Right. And so but during Hurricane Isabel, all those wind tunnels flooded.
yeah.
And
So we wonder how, all the economics and why do they go there? Are these minds, bright minds evolving or what?
yeah, it's
You-
like a Fiddler on the Roof, right? Tradition.
Something like that. When I was in Arizona and that whole area, New Mexico, Arizona, and the lower part of Utah doing photography in the desert, I could hear, we would always be shooting these rocks.
Mhm,
Those were the subjects, these
Mhm.
amazing rocks that actually end up looking like things. They have,
Mhm. Sure.
and I could hear, they're made out of underwater in the ocean, porous and like a
Mhm.
coral. They're all
Yeah.
built this way, and I
Mhm.
could hear the water. So this whole place is very obvious was underwater at some point,
Oh, sure. Oh, there's no doubt
and
about
it's
that.
very, very obvious.
Right.
So, and now it's so imagine
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. We have a very interesting place that is up near the Cumberland Gap, which is the gap through the Appalachians, right? And there's this big cut through the mountain, and it shows these striations of sedimentary rock in the shape of a U, and so the ends of that were aimed up at a higher peak above where you are, but you can't see it because it's completely worn away.
Mm,
And of course,
yeah,
it took
something's
50
gonna
million
drop.
years. Right.
Well, if you Google it one day when you're in the mood, if you can find it, I'm not exactly sure, but Edgar Casey,
Oh,
Edgar
yes,
Casey,
I know
he
Edgar.
gave very succinct descriptions as to the areas of the United States that would fall off the
Oh, yeah.
horizon.
Yeah, Edgar Casey has Atlantic University, and just by coincidence, because I was raised in the Navy, right? He lived and built his empire up in Virginia Beach, Virginia,
Yes.
and it's literally right next to Oceana, which is a naval air station for the East Coast, and it's part of the main Norfolk Naval Complex, okay, which has many different Navy bases there. But Virginia Beach is where Oceana is, and the officers' beach for all of those Navy stations, which looks out onto the Atlantic, is literally across the street from his original place. And so I used to go there.
Is it still there?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And, they have a very, very interesting gift shop there.
Oh, yeah. He was an amazing healer, but nobody paid attention to what he was saying.
Well, a lot of people paid attention. A lot of people do pay attention today.
Right now, but in the healing industry, he would travel in his sleep. And I had a tape in which described the actual journey as what he would see, and things become bigger, and then I can see this and that. And he said at some point in time, all that there is birds and houses and people, no animals. The animals will all be gone. The only animal in existence was the bird.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, he was an amazing man, and we
And we
bought,
can see we are experiencing this wave.
yeah,
It's
people,
it's on its way.
right. People are starting to get the idea that Casey might have been into something and up to something. But
Yes.
anyway, I have to,
Okay. Well, I hope you have a
call.
lovely evening
Yep, thank you so
and
much.
get some rest.
I'm going to do my darndest to get some rest.
Yes. And I'll see you next
Fortunately, I
week.
had a doctor's appointment for tomorrow that got called off because they wanted to put a tube down my throat through my nose into my stomach and then leave it there for 24 hours. And this afternoon they called and canceled because they said their equipment isn't working.
Oh, that's good.
So
You're a
therefore,
trooper.
so therefore, tomorrow night when we're doing Colleen's session, I won't have a tube sticking out of my nose.
Oh goodness, you are like my mother. You're made out of stone when it
Well,
comes to that
I'll tell
doctor
you,
procedures.
I'm having lots of experiences with doctors right now, but I'm believing that at the end of this year, I will be a complete retread and everything will be hunky-dory for another many years.
Well,
But
diet and nutrition is actually will do wonders for your spirit.
well, I've been doing it all along, believe it or not, but you know, I became allergic to beef, pork, and lamb in 2013 because I was bitten by a Lone Star tick, which causes the enzymes in your blood to change. And so since then, I haven't been able to eat those meats. And
Interesting. A
so
Lone Star tick. I was bitten by the other one that gives you Lyme disease.
yeah, well, that's also hell on earth, but the Lone Star tick in this area between Western Virginia up into Connecticut, if you get bitten by the Lone Star tick, you're done with beef for the rest of your life.
Oh, and how did you know? You saw the tick or?
No, I didn't see the tick and I wasn't aware of the bite at the time, but I know I have experienced the repercussions of it, which was that I was having very serious allergic reactions to these meats. And of course I had eaten beef my whole life, you know, until I was 65. I ate beef all the time, right?
They have to hit you hard for you to make those changes.
Yeah, well, this does hit pretty hard, but you know, the funny thing is once that happened, once I knew what it was, I'm not even tempted by beef anymore.
There's so much out there to eat.
I had this experience in Dubai where I had the last prime rib of my life at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse in Dubai. And we finished this meal at like 10 o'clock at night. And I'd had a petite prime rib, like a 10 ouncer, right? And I go back to my room and about 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and my whole body from my neck to my knees was blown up 1 inch above its normal level. And it was bright red. Okay. So here I am in a hotel in Dubai at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to decide whether I should go to the ER or not, right? So instead I called my friend, the doctor here in the U.S., and he says, well, take 2 Benadryl and call me back in a half hour. So I took 2 Benadryl, and when I called him, he said, how is it? And I said, well, it's not getting worse anyway at this point. And so he says, well, take 2 more Benadryl and we'll talk tomorrow. So I took 2 more Benadryl, so total 400 milligrams of Benadryl, and I was out, okay, because it's sleep inducing, right? So it puts you to sleep. So I woke up at 9 o'clock in the morning, all gone. Everything that had happened to me that night was
It's like a bad
solved.
dream.
Yeah, but I didn't, I didn't know what was causing it still.
Oh,
And it was only when I came back to the States and went to see an allergist and had a few more incidents. And then,
you were lucky you didn't keep eating next day more.
well, that's right, because the reactions get worse and worse, and they can cause a heart attack or something like that.
Lone Star tick, huh?
Yeah, Lone Star tick. Stay away from those guys. Anyway, okay.
Okay, well, have a lovely evening, Skip.
Yeah, maybe we'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
If you can make it to Colleen's class.
Yeah,
Did
I
you
haven't. Am I supposed to do a drawing or something? I'll try to make something.
Well, I think it's supposed to be an emanation for what we've been doing for the last 2 months.
Okay.
The collage. So
Oh, the collage. So we're still with the collage.
yeah, still working on the collage, and then there's going to be something new in June.
Okay, so I'll do a collage then.
Yeah, and so anyway,
Okay.
take